People could phrase it that way. I would subsume what you're referring to as tribalism under the rubric of falsification of reality. And that falsification of reality is intentionally done by our enemies, and they do it in various ways. Nowadays, let's say, for example, the Berlin Conference borders here in these neo-colonial cages, that Ghanaians and Nigerians supposedly don't get along. As a matter of fact, you'll find old people who remember Ghana Must Go, where Ghanaians were, driven out of Nigeria, and then also when Nigerians were driven out of Ghana, where there's reciprocal, so forth and so on. You have this thing in Umzansi where they call it, um, you know, uh, you know, basically where Nigerians are hated there. Where if they find a Nigerian, they say the Nigerians are there and they're stealing their jobs, so they'll beat them up and they'll burn them alive. They'll necklace them, where they'll put a tire around them and burn them. You find all these types of things going on, and all of these are based on falsification of reality. Because what is South Africa? And did you decide that you are a South African? What is a Nigeria? Who even gave that place that name? What is a Ghana, right? Even Ghana isn't the name of the empire that's supposed to be named after. The name was Wagadu, whereas you had this Arab called Al Khwarizmi who took the title of the ruler as Ghana, which translates to warrior king, and they said, oh, that's the land of the Ghana, and it also the pronunciation isn't Ghana. Originally it was Ghana. That's what the GH stands for, as a G sound. So essentially, yeah, like what is a Ghana? First, it's not even named correctly because if you want to name it after the classical empire, then you need to name it Wagadu. So, essentially the point that I'm making is in terms of multiplication of reality, is getting people to identify with identities that are not only not decided by them, not originating from them, but that are also not in their own interest. So, even when we use, these types of terms, so I mentioned, this idea of Ghana, that's not even the name. If you want to mention the actual name, it would be Wagadu. If you want to mention the name, it's not Ghana like how people in Ghana pronounce it. It's Ghana. And when you find, languages that have that sound, they actually pronounce it correctly, such as the languages that you find contemporarily, places like Mali, Senegal, the Sahel, all of them have the K sound. And it's also the Sarahule, speakers, the speakers of that language, Soninke, people who had that as their empire at that time. So it means that the identities that we're operating on, the basis of, are not real identities, nor are they even supposed to be. You have people who call themselves African Americans, and I love Baba Omale's view of it, where it says if you were an American, you wouldn't catch no hell. That African American, the way English language works is that the right is right-headed. This means that the noun is on the right, and then the left is the adjective. So when you say when you say African American, you're describing a particular type of American. Now, why did white people want us to use that term African American? It was to essentially subsume our identity underneath an identity that makes us think, well, if I'm an American, if I'm a particular type of American, African American, then what am I supposed to do? Well, I'm supposed to do what other Americans do. I'm supposed to join the military, which is what, you know, African Americans do. I'm supposed to, celebrate these white holidays, Harbor Days, Thanksgiving, misgiving, all these types of things. Um, so, this is essentially what happens when you have an identity that's not of your own creation. But then the same things, happen with all the fragmentary identities when we think that, I'm a Jamaican or I'm a Haitian or I'm a this or I'm a that, all of them, whether it's outside, the only thing that is a real identity, that's something that could be operationalized in terms of collectively building power for Black people, is the identity that white people don't want us to have, so-called white people don't want us to have, which is the identity that we had thousands of years ago when we called ourselves Kemetsu, which is to say Black people, and that's in classical Kemet because when we had that as an identity, we actually operationalized that and drove non-Black people out of the land of Black people. What we actually did when we had that as an identity is that we actually built a wall to keep non-Black people out of the land of Black people. Then more than that, we brought other Black people into the land of Black people, the lands of other Black people into the lands of other Black people, into the land of Black people, so that we could again make war and drive off our enemies. And we did that successfully for a good 3,000 years.